Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to be checking out Battlesector. You see, around the same time as Omens of Destruction, they did get a DLC drop, the Astra Militarum, or Imperial Guard if you're an oldie like myself. Not only that, but today, around the same time that this video is going live, there will also be a patch drop which not only changes up some things for the Sisters of Battle, but will introduce two new units, a little bit more info on that, for the Astra Militarum. A lot of requests, including a Sergeant hero. And before we begin, this video is in fact sponsored by Slytherin, the publishers and now new developers of this title. So let's talk about the Astra Militarum because there is quite a lot. If you haven't seen this DLC just yet, you can imagine that there is a bunch of different troop options. You've got two more coming in as the patch comes out, but alongside that you've got a wide variety of different tanks. You know, this is what your Imperial Guard were for. If you're kind of missing 8th edition Guardsmen, this is probably the best one for you. And you do have some units. Keep in mind, a lot of weapon options come in, so your tanks will be very, very different depending on how you use them in a loadout. Obviously, keep in mind that your Guardsmen will be a little bit squishy. I'll showcase a little bit later on. But in most cases, tanks, and tanks. I think this is the first vehicle-heavy faction that we've had in Battlesector. And it's good to see them experimenting because there's so many different factions when it comes to 40k. And it looks like this game is going to get support for a long time. We do have an interview later on in this video with David, the executive producer at Slytherin. So the Astra Militarum can be used in all the regular game modes that you're used to, so skirmish, multiplayer, and also the planetary supremacy. That's the mode I'd like to play the most because I quite like the custom campaign aspect. And yeah, the Astra Militarum, we do have to talk about it, was a little bit of a drama when it released because the balance was a little bit off. That is actually going to be talked about by the dev in this interview. And they're going to get the two new units, keep that in mind, just to flesh them out a little bit more. Slytherin do seem very, very committed to making sure that DLCs are what the players expect from it. I've been able to play with the DLC for a small while now, and it's pretty damn good. I like Guardsmen. I've always kind of liked the Guardsmen, though I'm more partial to the Steel Legion myself. The Guardsmen are squishy, but the tanks are very, very durable. I've been trying to run a full tank-heavy army, or as close to it as possible. I just had a little bit of a problem because I ended up fighting against a Necron army, and yeah, I lost a lot of troops. I wasn't prepared for that. That's always a little bit awkward. Must also admit, every time I play Battlesector, it's the same as playing Total War. I always end up wanting to paint some of the units there, which I'm very tempted. I've got 2 boxes of Cadians here, and I might do something with them. Who knows? It's just I'm a bit busy with Old World lately. I can't comment too much on the coming balance patch that's coming out because we haven't had early access to that, unfortunately. But I've been told that it's going to fix up the Sisters of Battle. There's also a few changes coming in for balance overall, which is going to be quite nice because at the end of the day, Sisters of Battle are quite an old DLC, but seeing them get fixed up is always great. These types of games require constant balance changes if possible, because as you can imagine with a game like this, especially set in a Warhammer setting, it's very rock, paper, scissory. The starting army for planetary supremacy is quite large. You're going to be dealing with a lot of guardsmen, some weapons teams, a little bit of everything in terms of flavor, which is actually really, really nice because, well, with guards, you want to just throw loads and loads of bodies. And how this works is that your guardsmen are very, very cheap in terms of points. So you know there's a point system when it comes to those battles there. You won't be losing that many points if you're losing guardsmen left, right, and center. They have a decent amount of damage. They obviously get better when you have a commissar around the area because, yes, you can execute your troops, which is very, very nice. But your big heavy damage falls around your tanks and sometimes even your weapons teams. You see, some people don't forget the weapons teams exist. The tech tree itself is huge purely because there are so many different types of weapons. It is absolutely wild. But it's mostly for your tanks, as you can imagine here. It is kind of overwhelming at the beginning, but yeah, I mean, you know, it's just like picking up a Chimera box or a Lehman Russ box and going, okay, let's get to work. This is where people start magnetizing, but I don't. The units themselves look amazing. I've always loved the level of detail put into the units in Battlesector. As we are aware, what they do is they use the models, not the art, as reference. So it's always really spot on. Looks just straight out the box and painted to a very high quality standard. I think that's really important because you want the units to look like the tabletop minis. That's what inspires people to get into the hobby. So for the next part of this video, we're going to talk to one of the developers on Battlesector who's going to explain the process behind the game, some plans, well, hints of plans for the future, and also just in general talking about Battlesector. I'll allow him to introduce himself and we'll begin just now.
Hi, I'm David Sharrock. I'm the game director of Battlesector.
Cool, cool. So, Battlesector has been one of these games which really was quite different and has evolved over the years, right? Because it started off with a very intense story with, by the way, one of the best intro cinematics for the Warhammer 40,000 setting ever. I just absolutely adore that one. And then obviously a bunch of DLC has come in. You've had separate campaign features come in. How has the process of the evolution for this game come into play?
Um, so yeah, it's one of those things of when you first make the game. Although it was initially made by Black Lab Games, who are out in Perth in Western Australia. So they previously made Battlestar Galactica Deadlock with us, so we'd worked with them a lot. So we knew they were trustworthy and built stuff, and we wanted to build something else with them. And then we said to them that, well, there's potentially a Games Workshop game available, at which point they bit our hands clean off. And then started the process of that, but they'd never made a tactical turn-based game before. We've at Slytherin, we've made lots of them, including things like Sanctus Reach and Gladius and Armageddon. Those are kind of all 40k games that we've worked on previously. So there was kind of it takes a while to kind of get that balance of what game do you want to make, and the guys at Black Lab really wanted to make something quite narrative, something that really kind of broke some of the rules of tactical turn-based games. So a lot of the kind of Battlesector's thing is you can just run units around until you start shooting. You just run any number of units around you want to. There's no kind of forced you move this guy, move that guy. But that did mean there was kind of 2.5 years of just getting this perfect story campaign of the retaking of Bal Secundus, the purging of Tyranids. So the AI was all about Tyranids. The user stuff was all about Blood Angels with a few Sisters of Battle thrown in. So that was a really focused effort towards that. And then when it did well, which is always nice, but it's never a guarantee, it's always nice, it's then a case of, well, what do we do now? And they'd obviously just spent 2 years sweating away on this narrative campaign. I don't think they really wanted to do another one right away. But the great thing of 40k is there's a lot of it. So it's like, right, what should we do now? How can we make this fun with more stuff? So let's look at, right, who do we want to add? Who's cool? Well, we've got one Xenos, we've got some Imperium. Who else do we like who's cool? Well, Necrons are cool. So we went to Necrons, but it's a case of, well, how do we play against Necrons? And then from that, our Planetary Supremacy game mode came out, and that's kind of the start of then how Battlesector has moved forward of what's cool, who do we want to put in next, how do we make them fun within the game? And there's been a kind of a few years of, well, who do we want to add? And just passion stuff from the dev team of, well, I really like Tau, or I really like Sisters of Battle, or, oh, Demons of Court are cool. And so we've added them in just because we've wanted to, because we've had a passion for it. And then we've updated game modes and added more multiplayer features and added more single player features, kind of going through. But it's not until relatively recent kind of had a definite directional plan. It's just been like, well, this is cool, we should do this. Which fortunately is helped by the dev team being great and our community being great and telling us what's really cool. So we've tried to give them the stuff they want. But as you've known, kind of Black Lab, we've basically taken it over from them now, so it's an entirely a Slytherin project. So we run it internally. So whereas I was the producer on it before, working with the team at Slytherin, I'm now the game director, working on multiple teams with Slytherin and outsourcers. And we now have a plan of kind of all these things that maybe we just followed the rule of cool before, and now we've followed the rule of, actually, no, this is what people want. How do we give it to them?
That's awesome.
So that's kind of, so Astra Militarum came about because, well, people want it. They're quite challenging because they are quite customizable and they have tanks. Battlesector has generally been a game about infantry, and suddenly you've got a faction who have quite a lot of tanks. So that has been a big change to kind of the meta feel of the game. Suddenly everyone's going, I don't have enough armor piercing, which is a fair point. So there's now a whole kind of rethinking of us is kind of like, well, it's not just about infantry, it's also about tanks and infantry and tanks and tanks. So yeah, there's lots of new organic ways of thinking how it can go forward, and we have lots of plans.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, the 40k setting is huge, right? There's so much that could potentially be done, and it's good to see that there's plans, because the people I talk to about this game, they speak about it very fondly, and it's always, when's the next thing coming out? When's the next thing coming out? And now with this patch that's just about to drop, there's 2 new units. Can you talk to us about those?
Yes, so we put the Astra Militarum out December last year, and then we did a patch of them in January to kind of they're a bit limp on release, so we buffed them up a bit. Just to better make them feel as they should do. I think we were a bit scared that a load of new tanks would dominate the battlefield, so we made them a bit weaker than we should have done. They are now possibly a bit too strong, but swings and roundabouts. But what we found is that there's a couple of things. Firstly, Lehman Russ. So Lehman Russ come in so many different variants. So in the original release, we had the tank commander who has a Lehman Russ with battle cannon and runs around with his out the top of the hatch shouting at people. And then we had the Lehman Russ themselves who had the Punisher, Demolisher, and Vanquisher variants, all of which need building. And we didn't want to put one with battle cannon in because, well, we already got one with the tank commander, so why would we thought it'd just be a bit odd. But then everyone in the community went, where's my variant with battle cannon? So we've added a Lehman Russ with battle cannon as a variant into the game because people wanted it, and who are we to not say they cannot have it? So that was relatively easy because, well, we ordered a Lehman Russ, we ordered a tank commander, so hit bashing wasn't too hard. And then the other bit is that the new kind of gameplay features we put in for the Astra Militarum is all about chain of command. It's about having officers. It's about how officers grouped together with infantry make infantry better, which is quite different in gameplay to how every other faction works in the game. But then we noticed it felt a little odd because all the officers, well, we don't have the Lord Solar, but every other officer is kind of, well, you've got Acadian Castellan, you've got a Commissar, you've got a Tank Commander. They're quite senior figures, and it felt they've got to be big and powerful and mighty and do really cool things. But it means the chain of command is basically blobs of command. You have top guys, you have bottom guys, and you have little infantry, and it felt a bit odd. So to fix that, we're releasing Acadian Sergeant, who will sit as we did. Battlesector doesn't put sergeants in the squads. We have sergeants running around as separate units. So Sergeant Carleon was your hero in the first game. He ran around as his own little guy, and it means that we can give separate flavour to them and not have to lose them in the morass of infantry. So the Acadian Sergeant is very much full of small but mighty little buffs for infantry. So the idea is you run him with other commanders, and if those commanders get taken out, you've still got a commander who's still giving some buffs. And importantly, if you put him with a detail of infantry, he just makes that infantry work just that little bit better, such that and he's also quite cheap. We've never had such a cheap officer. So he's actually very takeable. He's very good for escorting infantry around. If the opponent wants to spend their firepower to snipe him, he's quite cheap. It doesn't really matter. But if the opponent doesn't take him out, every single one of your other infantry is suddenly that bit much better.
Right.
And if you've got 40 guardsmen who all have 15% more firepower, that's a significant number over time. So
yeah, it adds up.
Yes. So I'll be interested to see how people adapt to them.
That sounds awesome, honestly. It's great to see that you guys have taken a lot of community feedback also, because it's quite important, especially for it's important for video games, but I feel it's also important for Warhammer video games, where balance can always be very skewed because you're going for the lore friendly aspect, and this is supposed to do this, but that's just going to break the game.
Yeah, we have a lot of that, and it's one of those things of trying to chase real balance as soon as you got more than 2 units is pretty much impossible.
Yeah.
The best we can do is make it fun and fair.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way we can ever make Battlesector truly balanced, because there will always be a faction who, when picked against another faction, squashes it, but then in other faction competitions doesn't do well.
Yeah.
Just because of the nature of what each faction brings to the table.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're never going to try and chase down true balance, but we'll always listen to the community, both single player and multiplayer community, of what's fun.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's coming out with this patch right now is we've got new stuff for the Astra Militarum to kind of buff them up, but obviously they've just come out, so they're the new hotness anyway. But our second faction release was the Sisters of Battle, and that was 2003. They're cool, but they've not been looked at for a little while, and their mechanics were kind of set in the base campaign and haven't really been looked at since. And we just had a lot of people in the community, and also evidence in kind of numbers with games we saw, of people just weren't having fun with them.
Yeah.
That's the bit that kind of was a bit sad. It's not that they weren't too powerful or too weak; just people didn't enjoy playing them. So this patch also has a significant kind of pseudo codex update for the Sister Battle. So going in, looking at each of the units and going, are you fun?
Yeah.
How can we make you more fun? How can you be more reliable and more interesting to play with? So they are, I think our Canoness now has 8 abilities, which is the most thing of any unit. Not all active, mostly passive, but still, her bar at the bottom of the screen is now like, I can do all sorts of things, which is, she is an absolute powerhouse, and I've probably undercosted her, but we'll see. I think I super buffed one up while practicing, hit an orc boy in the back for 300 hit points of damage from one attack.
Wow.
So so there's lots of potential now.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing of, it's not just now about when's the next new thing to come out. It's about how can we make sure that when people have owned armies, that they're always still fun to play.
Yeah.
I don't want people to be disappointed by something they have in their library.
Yeah, no, that's great. Going back to older DLCs and going, okay, these need a tune-up and so on, that's fantastic. It's obviously something that we're very used to in the tabletop with the FAQ system, right? So this is always, it's very, very good to hear that from developers, because at the end of the day, you know, it happens with other titles, with other games. We're not obviously going to mention any, but some DLCs can fall behind and there's no point going back to them. But a new player coming in, likes the Sisters of Battle, here's, oh look, they've gotten a tune-up, now's the time for me to buy it. You know, that's fantastic. That's really, really good to hear. The commitment to the community is always very, very important.
Yes, well, we know the 40k community has always lots of chat. We are never short of opinion.
Yeah.
It's said to say. Our job as the game developers is kind of to behave almost like a doctor. We'll listen to people and they'll tell us where it hurts.
Yeah.
We then have to diagnose that issue and operate, but we have to be the ones to do it. We kind of have to just basically, as I said, be the listening ear, and then work with all our plans to make sure we try and make it not necessarily hurt less, but make it fun. So I don't mind a bit of pain for a player, because pain can be enjoyable. You can go, oh, I'm really frustrated by this, and get past it, and that feels great.
Yeah.
So I don't want to make Battlesector into some very easy curb stomp for people.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to make it so that it's just not fun anymore to take some factions or some game modes. That's very much what we're not about.
That's great. That's great. Now, we don't have a lot of time. As Paolo said, we only had a certain amount of time here. But I do want to ask, seeing obviously as now the Guard are out, we're getting some new units. Any little hints towards the possible future?
There's certainly lots to come. There's obviously always big events in the kind of the middle half of the year for Warhammer 40k. This year, I'm sure, will be no different.
Yeah.
And every single time at this point of the year, there's always something good from our stuff, whether it's from Gladius or from Battlesector, there's always something coming, and we can never talk about it, as is the way. But yeah, so in our latest kind of dev diary, we put out, if people go to kind of the Steam page or our website or any of our socials, they'll see our latest dev diary, and at the bottom of that is a link to apply to our closed beta testing community, because we need some closed beta testers, and people can read into that what they will.
Awesome. That's always good. You see that if you guys are interested in a little bit of playtesting and stuff, that's always fun. But yeah, honestly, thank you so much for this. Obviously, I know you guys are very busy, especially with the patch about to launch, and it must be a bit of a scramble. So I do appreciate
it's reasonably calm, but I am, yes, poking various things to say, move faster, please.
Yeah. But guys, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.
For each one of us that falls, 10 more will take our place.
Hostiles! We're not taking them on board! Hostiles!
We're under fire! Oh! Right through the armor! Oh! Right through the armor!
Supporting fire!
Don't they know who we are?
Heavy weapons.
Armored Sentinel, ready. Sentinel on the move.
Dread's taking a pounding.
Victory through discipline. Flee or be cut down where you stand.
Boy, hit me, not me bike! Get off me bike!
Awaiting your orders. First lines, fire!
No, not the paint job!
Moving to the battle line.
We's too fast, how they hitting us? Boy, hit me, not me bike! We's too fast, how they hitting us?
Chimera transport ready.
What next, sir? We've got your firepower. Pack it up and let's move. Heavy weapons. Opening fire!
Oh! Right through the armor! they know who we are?
Transport awaiting orders. Supporting fire!
Oh, right through the armor! We're under fire!
My conviction will not waver to the likes of you.
We're not taking them on board. Hostiles! We're not taking them on board. Hostiles! We're not taking them on board. Hostiles! We're not taking them on board.
Don't they know who we are? No, not the paint job!
Firing!
We's too fast, now they're hitting us!
Chimera transport ready.
We're under fire! Oh, right through the armor! Oh, hit me, not me bike! We're under fire!
Armored Sentinel ready.
Don't they know who we are? Oh, right through the armor! We're under fire!
Supporting fire!
We're under fire!